it slipped through. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and start just because this is gonna be on playback later. But what I wanted to tell the cult basically, and if you're in the cult or not, is that you've been sacrificed, and that's why you see the planet just falling apart. Everything is on fire. There's major earthquakes happening all over the planet, diseases left and right, flooding, hurricanes, tornadoes. That was all done intentionally through various means. Okay, so basically, the leaders of your cult, the elites, decided that it was time to start fresh, okay, to sacrifice you guys. And there's a number of reasons, right? And I don't disagree, okay? Now, many of you are not human, right? You don't have enough genetics, you don't have enough mental faculties, intelligence, or emotional capacity to be considered human beings. But that's not what they wanted, right? They wanted to create, and these are the Nazis, okay? But it goes deeper than that. But they wanted to create the supreme beings, right, that were better than humans. So over the years, they started playing with different genetic experiments, okay? So they took the DNA, and this is in the Bible, it's in the book of Romans specifically. So this goes all the way back to like the Vatican, biblical times, back thousands of years ago. Okay, they took the DNA of human beings, and I think it also, and I'm not like a Bible expert, but there's references to, like, I think it's the Nephilim procreating with human women and things like that. And the reason is because they were attempting to kind of merge the species and to create a supreme species. So they started doing genetic experiments where they put in the DNA of various like animals, reptilians, which are aliens, other alien species as well. Hello. And they made all of these different sub-creations, right? And for many generations, for thousands of years, well, it just depends. There's all different types of sub-creations from all different areas of the world, different colors, different races, different religious backgrounds, right? But they primarily were humanoid, okay? So human enough, not always, because if you look back at like the European, like, the old, like, royal families, right? They're not the real royal families, but a lot of those folks that lived to be like 20 years old, that was like their lifespan. It's because they were created by the royals, right? It was aliens, essentially, okay? Without putting it, I don't know how else to put it, but and they were doing these genetic experiments. They were putting like the DNA of like human beings with the DNA of pigs, or the DNA of horses, or the DNA of this, the DNA of that, so they made up all these like subspecies, okay, which is how we get a lot of different races, around the world, okay? And that's not to say that God did not create different races. Of course God did, but primarily God's people are brown people, okay? Various shades of brown. All right, so they took that DNA, but they combined it with the DNA of different alien species, different animals, and they've been tweaking that for thousands of years, okay? So what has resulted now is what we have roaming the earth, which I call creatures, okay? And the reason I call the population creatures is that they are actually not. There's a scale that they use to grade. It's called the humanity scale. All right, and so they grade the subspecies based on different factors, okay? And again, this relates back to mental intelligence, okay, your smarts, okay, your survivability, your health, emotional capacity, because the qualifying and defining factor across the board to be considered a human, what differentiates human beings from all other species, is that we have empathy, right? And so now the population is almost entirely devoid of empathy, right? You have a lot of people walking around that pretend to have empathy, or put on a mask and maybe start a charity, or they go to church and pretend to be good, godly people, but on the inside and what they do behind closed doors showcases a true lack of empathy, right? So we're at the point now with humanity, right? We can't even call this humanity because, okay, sorry, my thing's buffering. But we're at the point in humanity now where humanity has gotten so far away from human, right? Where you guys will harm children for gain, right? Where you'll harm animals, right? Other sentient beings, human beings, and people that are kind to you. You, in your brain, for whatever reason, it's partially genetics, right? You feel the urge to attack, right? You shouldn't, as a human being, see another person, right, and have an urge in your brain to kill, steal, and destroy, right? That's not normal. That's actually makes you a psychopath, okay? So pretty much everybody, right, at least here in America, and it's global, right, but everybody walking around is a psychopath. Okay, so they're willing to do anything for money. They worship money instead of the creator of the universe, and they worship self, which is narcissism, right? Now, that said, this has worked for the cult, for the elites, for the overlords, right, for a long time. They were able to create populations where, say, like and again, please don't think this is me being racist or having any sort of like hatred towards any cultures or nations or anything, right? But I'm trying to tell you the truth about what happened, okay? So say in China, right, they made an entire population that was intended to be like worker bees, okay, slaves, and that's what they were, right? That's what they are. So they're not intelligent, right? And this is what they're saying, not me, right? I don't know these people, but their whole purpose in life was to basically work in a factory, right? And then we have over here in America where they made the population to be consumers, right? So you guys are grafted to different types of DNA, and you're programmed with different, it's CIA programming, MK Ultra. They use like the television, the celebrities, the different means of programming you to want to consume. Now, when you factor that in with like the DNA of like an animal that eats a lot, okay, and we have a lot of people walking around that are hybrid, crossbred between humans and these specific animals because they wanted them to eat a lot. They wanted them to buy. They wanted them to purchase and consume and consume and consume. And so that is what they did, right? So they made a bunch of different species, different races, different colors, took the actual human DNA, combined it with the DNA of animals and insects and all of these things. So when you see me posting things and I'm like, what is this one made out of? Right? It's because they're made out of different things. Some of them are made out of like cockroaches, okay, for instance, and I'm not even joking, but they actually used the genetics of the cockroach because the cockroach is an insect that can survive a nuclear holocaust, right? So they were trying to kind of like push this, a good health, I guess is what you would call it, survivability, right, into the population by integrating that specific DNA into the population. So they make these creatures, okay, they're not human, They're a mix of different things, and they're made, the way they do it is they are made to look just human enough to trigger an empathy response in human beings, right? To trick humans into thinking that they are human, okay? And there's more to it than that, but that's going to be the baseline, all right? So basically what ended up happening is the world became very populated. These populations, you're looked at as cattle, okay? You're looked at as livestock. So they don't see you as like special or like your family matters. No, they see you as like a herd of animals because they own you, right? They made you and they own you. So basically what they decided to do, because you guys started becoming very expensive to maintain, and at the same time you are not working and producing anything, right? They wanted people that make money, not take money, right? So if you're someone that is sitting around and dependent on government handouts, for instance, right? If you are someone who collects welfare and is costing the government a lot of money, right? So that just to keep you alive, right? They decided, you know what we're going to do? We're just going to eradicate, and we're going to start new. Okay? Now that's the 3D kind of, you know, explanation as to what's going on. So what they did is there's a very spiritual aspect to this. It's biblical, right? These are the Freemasons, and they have a lot of prophecy hidden. Like they took 15 books out of the Bible and they keep that to themselves. So a lot of what's happening now is very prophetic, okay? And there's even more to the story than that. But they decided to eradicate you guys, okay? So I found out about this, right? And like I said, I've been owned by the cult since I was born, okay? I was born into the cult. The CIA made my physical body, right, with the DNA, and they have had the ability to do this since at least the 60s. That's how far back I can trace it. Okay, I think it was 69. The aliens actually delivered to the CIA the technology to to create the embryo, basically. So it's like IVF, right? What is that called when they make an embryo in like a petri dish, right? And then grow that into a human. That's what that technology, whatever that technology is, they've had that capability since the 60s. Okay, so they have been making people out of the DNA of deceased, celebrities, different. They've been doing tweaking of this, tweaking of that. So I said yesterday, which is the truth, that my biological father is Walt Disney and my biological mother is Whitney Houston. That said, though, I have integrated into my DNA also the DNA of Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. Okay, so the CIA essentially whitewashed me. They put just enough brown DNA to make me, they were looking to create like the perfect specimens, right? And I was made specifically to be a catalog girl. All right, so I was put into a catalog, and I was presented to the Freemasons that are my age, the frat boys is what I call them. Okay, so it would be like the Trump boys, the Biden boys, Elon Musk, the royals. I was presented to William and Harry to be a potential wife, okay? And they could pick out of this catalog who they were interested in, right? And so that is how they got their wives, all right? So all of them decided that I was too goody two-shoes, right, to be their wife, because they wanted wives that would let them do anything they want and not complain about it. They wanted wives that were very, like, oblivious, like, stupid to what they were doing. They wanted wives that would be part of their sex club, All right. And that was really the caveat. And that is what got me eliminated uh, as an option to be any of their wives. But they all know me, and I know all of them as well. All right. It's not like we hang out, like we're not friends, but they had the opportunity to stalk me, basically, to study me, and I was presented to them as a potential wife. Okay. So again, I've been trafficked my whole life. All right. Now, I had no choice in this, right? It's not like I signed up for this. No. I was born into the cult. The CIA literally made my body with the bloodlines that they wanted to continue, and then they play matchmaker with the males. Okay? So then that creates another new bloodline, right? Like it would be the DNA of then like some of them have the DNA of like dead presidents, like Abraham Lincoln. Okay, so then it would be Walt Disney is one grandfather and Abraham Lincoln is another grandfather, right? That would be the new genetics, right? So that's what I am. I'm basically a genetic experiment, my physical body, right, of the CIA. Okay, so anyway, and so are all of you. Right? There's really nobody, I don't think there's anybody walking around that is not touched in some way by the elites, right? As far as the genetics goes. Okay, we're all of different bloodlines and things. Some of you have prevalent bloodlines. You may be related to the Trump family or the Trump dynasty, for example. Some of you are related to the Rockefellers. Some of you may be related to the monarchy, right? Things like that. Okay, but it's because they use their DNA to create like a population, right? All right, where are we at? Will I talk to you for a little bit? Let me finish telling these folks what is going on. And you may want to listen as well, because this pertains to everyone on earth. This is not, like I said, a lot of people, because they are of certain bloodlines or lineages, believed that they were chosen, right? That they were special, that the cult elites chose them to survive, to carry on, right? And that is untrue, all right? That's untrue. And I'll tell you what really happened, you know? So basically, they decided to eliminate you guys, and they wanted to start a new colony, right, on a new planet. And for their new colony, they needed one female, biological female, not a tranny, right, but a female like me, right? And so they had all these females that they had essentially, you know, created, right, to choose from. And I got picked as their maternal DNA source, right? This does not mean that I get special treatment or that they even like me. They actually hate women. They're gay. But they needed maternal DNA to make a new population. So they judged and graded and, you know, studied and picked me based on certain factors, you know, and it's again, I have very good health. I have intelligence. I'm not like a nag or a bitch, you know. There's all different things that they looked at, okay? And then I have like genetics that they could mix with their genetics because of my brown DNA, which they're lacking, that would, in their minds, ensure sustainability of the new species. Okay, so basically what my role, and again, these guys are deranged, right? So who knows if they had an opportunity to take me on the spaceship and get me off the planet. Who knows? They would have had me probably in a dog cage, you know, like really, you know, that's what they do. It wasn't like I was going to be treated like a queen or royalty. No, they hate women, you know, but they just needed the DNA to start a new population. So that was what happened with me. Okay, so all of these bitches, it's so crazy because they're so fucking mean to me, and all I did was try to stop this from happening as far as the genocide of the population goes, right? I found out about this and I began to speak out about it, and I had to be careful in the beginning because when you come out and say something like that, like the government's killing you, right? They're planning to kill the whole population. It sounds crazy, right? It sounds like, oh, that could never be. And so many of you had interpersonal relationships with these politicians, with these celebrities. You felt like you were special, right? You felt like you were chosen, right? No. No. At the end of the day, they were going to narrow it down to the low 6. Okay. And by low 6, I mean these are the dirtiest of the dirty dogs, right? The ones who are willing to do the absolute most horrendous things. They're competing for that. And it's also a financial competition. So what happens is, okay, so Vegas, I'm using Vegas as an example because that's where I am. Okay. They have effectively, everyone here has a death sentence. Everyone. Okay. There's no water. The power is going to go out. It's 105 degrees right now at night. It's a lot hotter during the day. That alone is a death sentence for a lot of these people. Okay. But in addition to that, there's other factors going on, right? They're poisoning the food, they're poisoning the water, they're poisoning the medication. They've dropped a lot of diseases on the population. I mean, anything and everything that they could have done in addition to destroying the planet has been done to take you guys out. And whoever's territory this is, whoever takes you guys out, which is going to be, in this case, Trump, right? He gets all of your money, or it could be Musk as well, right? I don't know who you worship, but when you die, they just take all of your money, right? And then it's on to the next one. So they're kind of running all of these simultaneous extermination plots at once, right? So this is why the government is not warning you of impending disasters, because they caused them, right? And they don't want you to know, well, they say it would cause panic. I disagree. I disagree. And I'm trying to prove a point to them as well, and that is that your subspecies is so dumbed down, right? They lack so much intelligence that I cannot show them the USGS federal website data that says, oh my God, California has cracked in half and is about to crack and fall into the sea, okay, without them trying to kill me for saying that. They don't want to hear it. They don't care. They're not taking any warnings seriously, So I'm act day in and day out for continuing to try to warn people about what is happening, right? And then at this point in the game, the damage is done, right? It's a done deal, okay? So it's really a joke. It's not like I'm doing anything that's gonna save your life, At best. And I think this is what a lot of the upper level cult members have done here, is you could evacuate, right? A lot of people have left the country. A lot of people have fled Vegas, right? It's a ghost town. But the lower level minions that don't know about this, they are sitting ducks, And that is because, if 1 million of them die, right, all of that money that's sitting in their bank accounts belongs now to your cult leaders, right? Whoever sacrificed you, they get the money. And so they're playing a game, and part of the competition that they're having is that whoever's got the most money at the end of this, with the low 6 thing, whoever can kill the most people, right, they get your money, your assets, right? That's why, like, with Elon, he comes in and it's like Doge, they cut out cancer research for kids, Medicare, Social Security. I'm stunned they didn't yank the food stamps. But really, on the big scheme of things, the food stamps doesn't cost them, like, as much as other things do. And also, they were going to have a food stamp riot in Chicago when I was there. And in fact, the cult moved me, I'm dead serious, out of Chicago the day before they were going to stop the food stamp program, because in the homeless shelter that I was in Chicago, they were discussing heavily that they were going to riot in Chicago because of the food stamps. So they kept the program going until they're dead, right? Essentially, or until the food supply runs out, guys, because that has been destroyed and depleted. So, there's going to be a point where they pull the trigger, and yeah, there's going to be riots because there's not going to be any food, right? But they, for some reason, didn't want it to pop off, essentially, when they were originally going to pull the trigger, which was, I think, November 1st. They were going to cancel food stamps, and they decided not to. They kept it going a little bit longer, for their reasons, right? They didn't want to have the whole city of Chicago utterly on fire yet, right? And it wouldn't have just been Chicago, right? You could really have expected the food stamp riots to kind of almost like burn America down, you know what I mean? Like all cities, major cities, big, it would have been a big thing. So just to kind of sustain things a little longer, they kept that going. But I was moved out of Chicago because of that, right? They were going to riot. So anyway, what else is going on? So yeah, guys, it's unfortunate, but I tried to whistleblow for 3 years. I started in Florida, and I started speaking out online. I started speaking out on TikTok, on YouTube, and telling people, bits and pieces of what I knew. And part of their genocide is, they were killing the offspring kids, the younger ones. And there's reasons behind that. They call them junk children, which they're not junk children, okay? But a lot of these kids were essentially manufactured for purposes of consumption, okay? Whether they were manufactured to be sex toys, or manufactured to be food, or manufactured to have their blood drained and used as a beauty treatment or a health treatment, because that's what they're doing. They're injecting baby blood like in their faces and stuff, and they are using it for blood transfusions and things like that to give themselves a boost of good health from innocent children who are healthy, right? And of course that kills the kids, right? And then they end up with these truckloads full of children that I was taken to North Carolina and personally witnessed being, turned into hamburger meat. And those kids are being served, in fast food, right? So they use the kids for the food supply, right? But it started with their manufactured kids that they make in the tunnels and stuff like that, okay? And then they decided, like I said, to eradicate the population. So they started taking kids out of underprivileged communities, right? Black kids, Mexican kids, even white kids, guys, from really poor areas. Like I said, they have emptied out entire towns throughout Florida, Appalachia, the South, as part of this population reduction plan. And they sold this to their, loyal followers as, well, you're good, we're going to save you or your bloodline, or you're part of our bloodline, so we're safe, but we need to kind of eradicate this population here, right? And to be fair, the offspring now from this, whatever line or generation this is, are, I hate to say it because they're children, right? But genetically, they're what's the word I'm looking for? Not viable. Okay? They're not viable. They have what they call baby mamas, right? And so these baby mamas are essentially baby factories, right? and they're intended to basically produce, these kids, and these kids are being manufactured for purposes of rape, whatever, right? Cannibalism, they're just commodities, right? But the children are so genetically kind of destroyed in conjunction, they're corrupt, it's genetically corrupt, right? In conjunction with the fact that they do not have parents, right? They're born into crack houses, right? Where the mother is not a mother, she's a baby factory. So she's getting benefits from the Freemasons to just crank out baby after baby after baby. And you'll see them like crying on YouTube and TikTok because they're, oh, my food stamps got cut down. I'm supposed to be getting paid for this. And when they say that, because they have a deal with the Freemasons to crank out all these kids, right? And they think that they're creating like the bloodlines, or, they don't care what happens to the kids, right? That's not their business. Their business is to pop them out and, feed them, essentially. And then the schools bear the burden of primarily raising the kids, right? And that's been that way for decades, okay? Where we have like a real lack of parenting here in America, right? The schools raise the kids, right? But now the education system is also corrupt, and there are new generations of teachers, okay? The teachers don't want to have the burden of these kids because a lot of them are born mentally ill. A lot of them are born with physical ailments, autism, behavioral issues, all kinds of things, right? Even mental retardation is huge, okay? And so it is a lot for someone to be getting paid $30,000 a year to have 25, 30 of these children under their care all the time. And the quality of like school teacher that they're bringing in now is, there's really not a whole lot you can do, right? The species is too corrupt. It's too corrupted, okay? So future generations, and this is another reason they decided to nix it, right? Because we see now where, just for an example, and it's not every single one, right? But you'll see like two 18-year-olds, let's just say, get together, subspecies, right? And then produce an offspring. And they are literally incapable of caring for their offspring, right? The kids die, it causes all sorts of problems, okay? And then the offspring, like I was saying, not only are the parents very sick and dependent on the government to live, the children of these now totally government dependent creatures are dependent on the government from birth. You know what I mean? So it's just a very expensive herd of animals. All right, that's how they're looking at it. It's just like if you had a farm and you bred this cow with this cow, and then this cow with this cow, and then you made this cow, and then you played with this, and farmers do this as well, right? And somewhere along the way, the genetics of the offspring, the animal, something gets screwed up, right? Where they're sick, or they're born deformed, or, they don't live very long, or, there's all different types of things that can happen genetically to any living organism, okay? And so that's what happened here with humanity, right? So, and I love all children, right? Children are innocent, and I will never not fight for any child, right? Because it's not their fault. This has nothing to do with them. But when they grow up to be, 12, 13 years old, which I have seen so much of this, right? And they make free will choices to be very destructive. Okay, that's the other thing with these kids, is that they are defiant. They will not be able to work. Okay, these are not even people that you would be able to have work in the McDonald's or the Walmart, right? Menial, very simple jobs. They don't have the mental faculties. They do not have ethic, right? They don't have it. They're useless. Okay? And so for this to continue, right, with this subspecies, right, it can't. It has run its course. All right? You can't even get the creation here, the adults, to throw their trash in a trash can, right? Something so simple. And some cities have trash cans and some don't. Vegas has trash cans, right? I always throw my trash in the trash can. So I see this in every city that I go to. It's one of the things that I look for in a city. You know, how are your bus stops? How do you have trash cans, right? Because if you don't, then there's, you know, of course your city is going to look like absolute garbage. People are just going to throw trash everywhere. I take the bus and I walk on foot everywhere. So I actually see, I'm not in a car, I see what's going on the street. Okay. And some cities are utterly and totally fucking tanked. Phoenix is an example. Atlanta is an example. All right. Just to name a couple. It's shocking, right? It's shocking because these grown adults that have access to a trash can, right, will choose to just literally throw their trash wherever they are, right? They stink up the joint. You see what I mean? Destroy it, right? Make it unlivable, right? Who wants to live like that? You know, not me. But they don't think about how that impacts the community. They don't think about how that impacts the planet, the animals, the other people that are walking around, right? They don't think about that. It's a very selfish creation. The creatures were made to really only consider themselves. Either, maybe I don't even think that that's possible genetically, as much as it is like a learned behavior or something. I guess they just make a free will choice, because when there's trash cans and you just decide, you know what I'm going to do? Chuck my trash wherever the fuck I am, right? That's a free will choice, and it's selfish and it's ridiculous to me. You know what I'm saying? And for those of you that throw your trash away, that probably makes sense to you too. You don't want to see that. You don't want to be stuck cleaning up their mess. I always say this, I'm not your putzfrau, right? I throw away my trash, but I'll be damned if I'm going to get out here and pick up everybody else's trash at the bus stop. Nope. There's a trash can right next to the bench, right? They need to learn how to use it, or the city is now going to take on an additional expense of cleaning that up, right? That's not going to be on me. So, you know, they're not able to do their part, right? They're not able to contribute something so minuscule and simple as consideration for the environment, or consideration for do we want the city to look like a trash dump? They do, right? They do. I don't know where these creatures are getting this trash. I was walking today, just a 20-minute walk, and I always look on the ground because I find all types of interesting things on the ground. But I was like, you know, we've got really nice neighborhoods, you know, and beautiful homes. And then right there outside of their gate is just layer upon layer of garbage and filth, you know, and there's trash cans. Like I said, at every bus stop. If you can't find one in a bus stop, you can pop into a fast food restaurant, chuck your trash right in the trash. It's super simple. Walmart has trash cans right in the front door. You don't even have to walk inside. They have them outside, you know? So it's not that hard to just clean up after yourself, right? But the new generation, this current generation of subcreation, they don't have that in them. The other thing that they do a lot of is graffiti. You know, like what are they even writing? First of all, I can't decipher what these symbols and all this other crap that they're drawing on everything is. But it's like, what is the driver inside of you that makes you want to pick up a permanent marker or a can of spray paint and, you know, destroy the bench or destroy the sign, or just, you know what I mean? They're in the bathroom stalls at the gym, you know, there's these little signs on the back of the door, and they've graffitied on those. Like, what? You know, like, really? You could not control yourself to not draw on the bathroom door in the gym. And and these people are functioning adults in the gym, right? They're paying a monthly fee for a gym membership. So what compelled you to take a permanent marker and draw these weird graffiti symbols all over everything? Why would you do that? It's just stuff like that, guys. It's just the little things that degraded society and humanity. It's little things and big things. Like I said, they cannot rear offspring anymore, right? They can produce offspring. Not all of them. A lot of them are infertile for a reason, right? But then, of course, here comes the government with IVF. Oh, we can sell you a solution, right? And then they're using the DNA of people like me to make new little babies. You know what I mean? And it's like, no, no, right? Trying to solve this issue, and it's not solvable because in order, and again, I was raised by really rotten, evil Satanists, okay? I was raised by the cult. So I did not have what would be considered like a loving, good childhood or any time in my life, right? But I was able to still use my intelligence and empathy, which is a human emotion, to make decisions not to detrimentally impact the community by throwing my trash everywhere or by stealing things or breaking into people's homes or cars, right? I'm not here, like I've never been that way. You know what I mean? I've never done anything like that, nor would I, right? Because that's not my home, that's not my property. I don't steal people's stuff. I know how it feels to have your stuff stolen. You know what I mean? And there's nothing in the planet that I need that bad, right? Where I need to steal it from someone else who has obtained it via work or however they obtained it, right? It's not my stuff. So I just leave it alone. If I don't have it, I don't have it. It's not mine, right? And that's a common courtesy that everybody should have, right? But they don't have it, So essentially, the population ran its course. Okay, so now we have a bunch of people that are sick physically. They're all on medications. Almost all of them are mentally ill on different, mental health medications. Okay, they have addictions that are drivers. They have and a lack of work ethic, a lack of integrity, a lack of creativity, right? A lack of drive or motivation to create, right? And again, this kind of boils down to they want people that make money, not take money, right? They need people that can bring something to the table, and money is the biggest seller for these guys, right? So if you can make a lot of money, then you have value, right? And you add something to the population, and this is their opinion, right? Not necessarily mine. But yeah, I mean, if you want to be a productive, not everybody's going to be a business owner, not everybody's going to be able to create big money making things, right, that sell, but you have to be able to, you know what I mean, do something. And if you can't, right, then you better be the best worker bee that you can be. You know what I mean? It's that kind of thing. But now they're all lazy, demanding this, demanding that. I mean, they're, they don't want to go to work. And again, I love working from home as well. But guess what? I started my own company so that I could work from home, right? When I had to be in the office, I went to the office, right? So these people don't want to go to the office, right? They don't. And when I did work from home throughout my career, because you do, you know what I mean? Especially in the types of jobs I had, law and things like that. Sure, you work remote sometimes. But guess what? I was working when I was supposed to be working, right? I wasn't saying I was working and then at the bar or at the beach or at the store, Um, you know what I mean? I was doing what I was paid to do. My colleagues are a different story, right? They would work from home and you would not be able to reach them all day, which to me is inexcusable. If you're working and you're not on vacation or out sick, then you need to be reachable. It's just little things like that. It's little things like that. So anyway, the work from home thing would have been a great concept, right? But 90% of the workforce and people that work remote and have colleagues that work remote know that I'm not lying about that either, right? They are not working. Like, what are they doing? Other things on the clock, So we can't even do that, and that's the professional crowd. This is the crowd that works, in law firms and offices and big companies and stuff like that. You can't trust your employees to do the job that you're paying them to do, So that's a wash, right? So, it was just time, guys, based on all of those things, right, to start over. And there's more to it than that, but this is not sustainable. It's not, and I did not realize that because I was someone who was sheltered from the general public. I wasn't totally sheltered, right? I worked for 17 years in my career. I worked with people and I had clients and, I met all different kinds of people throughout the course of my life. I wasn't like holed up in my house at any point in time. And then I had my own company where I had a large number of clients that I worked with on a one-on-one basis. So I got to know people through that avenue, those venues as well. But I think, kind of like all of the aforementioned, most people it's not a humanity anymore, and then when I got thrown into the Diddy ring, right, and I started getting trafficked through the homeless shelters. I had never been in a homeless shelter or anything like that, and I can't even go to them now. I'm not allowed, right? But which is fine because I went to the one in Vegas just to, try to get in. And let me tell you what, I should go live down there. I should show you guys the Vegas homeless shelter, just the outside. It was the worst I've seen. Phoenix was bad. Did I go back? I went past it. I'm sure I went past it at some point. Or maybe I saw it on YouTube and just didn't go. But it was so bad. I couldn't believe it. I mean, the stench of urine and feces when you just approach the general area is horrific. And then there are zombies just laid out all over the sidewalk. Like, it was so bad. I couldn't believe it. And there was no way to like live in that building and, well, just to have to breathe that smell in every day, but to live with those creatures, right? I have done it throughout the country, right? And they will steal my stuff. I mean, they just took one look at me and want to slit my throat, They will make my life a living hell, make shit up about me or try to get me in a fight so they get me kicked out. It's just better for me to be completely on my own, So I'm not mad about the homeless shelter situation, but I was seeking shelter because it is so hot. It was very hot in Arizona. It is very hot in Vegas. It is too hot, really. It poses a health issue, right, to be living out in this baking ass heat, right? But that's why I tried to get in. I was trying to get out of the heat, you know. And plus it's nice to have a place to store your belongings and things like that. You don't have to carry them around all day, but you know, I'm crafty. I figure things out. So anyway, you know, you look at the homeless shelter situation and the communities around the country, and I've been exposed to several, right? I've been homeless for 3 years now. So I've been homeless on the streets in Florida, Georgia, North Carolina, Ohio, Chicago. I was in a shelter after about a week, I think it took me to get in there. So I was on the streets for about a week and then in the shelter. And that's the last time I slept in a bed, was Chicago, October. Arizona, no shelter in Tucson or Phoenix, and no shelter in Vegas. But I'm on the streets, right? So I have met, you know, other homeless people. I try not to speak to anybody now, but a lot of times they'll figure out that I'm homeless and then they start to try to approach me because I look like I have money, or they want something from me. I don't know, you know, but I'm not here to make friends with anybody because I learned my lesson many times not to befriend anyone. Because what will end up happening, even if they came through with good intentions, which they never do, but even if that were the case, they're in the cult. And so the cult will at some level approach these people and offer them $50 to take me out, you know, or tell them they can do anything they want to me. And then, you know, I'm in a position where I've got to basically, you know, fight for my life, or, you know, fend off rapists and, you know, deal with people stealing my shit. And I don't have access to law enforcement in any capacity because I'm a victim in the Epstein ring. So that, or the hospital. So if I get injured, which, you know, God protects me, thank God, right? But if I were to get injured, let's just say, I can't go to the hospital, right? If I were to get in somewhere I needed, and this has happened, right, where I should have been able to call 911, call the police, but I cannot do that, right? As a victim of the Epstein ring, not only am I not, they don't protect me, right? I'm on their kill list. So, you know, dealing with the cops is useless. They will always side with the criminal because they're in the cult and I'm not. So that's how America law enforcement works, you know. So yeah, it sucks because, you know, for example, in Phoenix, you know, Erica Kirk has been trying to kill me because she's been trying to be me, okay? And I mean, to the point where, you know how I wear the black baseball cap and the black sweater, you know, she busted out on TV one day in my literal clothes, you know. I'm like, no, girl. Like, no, sis, you know. This is my street uniform. Like, no. But no, it's like that, you know. And so she's from Phoenix. She's from Arizona. Okay, so she has like free reign of Arizona. She owns the cops. She owns everybody, right? The TPUSA cult is Arizona. Okay, so they obey her commands. Well, you know, I was laying there one night and I was sitting there actually, just like I am right now. And this guy came up and was like, this fucking nasty piece of shit, you know, asked me for a pipe. And I'm like, no, I don't do drugs. I'm sorry, I don't have a pipe. And he stood there, you know, in my face. You know, I was sitting and he's standing, like his like dick's like, 5 feet away from my face. I'm like, you know, I'm aggravated. I'm like, did you need something else, or you can go now, right? Bye. And he got mad, right? And so I stood up, he pushes me into the cactuses and pulls out a knife and goes to stab me, okay? He was gonna murder me, you know, what appeared to be over a crack pipe or a G pipe, whatever the fuck drugs they're doing, right? But the reality is he was sent in as an assassin, as a hitman, right? And this has happened every city I go, right? Every single city. So he goes to stab me and didn't, right? I couldn't, right? I'm fine. But I wake up in the morning, I go to sleep on the sidewalk. I had taken some videos because he started pacing back and forth and he was like yelling at people walking by. He was out of his mind, deranged on drugs, okay? So I videoed and I put it on my Instagram. I'm like, check this guy out. He just tried to stab me, and I told the story. I'm like, listen, I'm in the Epstein ring and this is the life of a victim. You're not allowed to call the police. Anybody can come up and rape you, murder you, steal from you. They're allowed to do anything they want, and you have no protection from law enforcement, and there's no recourse, right? So I put it on my social media just to show, because I've been documenting my trafficking journey. I mean, why not? There's no law enforcement, right? Nobody's going to jail. They're allowed to do anything they want, and it's global. So there's no point in me not documenting it, right? What's going to happen? Nothing, So I'm just kind of showing people what life is like, Anyway, I wake up in the morning, and there's like 3 or 4 squad cars. They've got the yellow tape, and they're like taping me into like an enclave. I was sleeping outside of a coffee shop, like on a back sidewalk in the dark, and I'm like, is everything okay? And they're like, well, no, somebody got murdered last night. We need to talk to you. And I'm like, okay. So, and as soon as they said it, I'm like, oh my God, I think I know who did it. Right? And they were like, who? And I showed them the videos on my phone, and I'm like, look, this is what happened. He tried to stab me. The person was stabbed to death, and they were dead right there, like, 50 feet away from me. And they found him in the morning, So I'm like, okay, yeah, it was definitely probably this guy, right? And so, they took me to identify him, and I did. And, he ended up getting arrested. I don't know what happened. If he's out of jail, in jail, or whatever, but somebody got murdered, stabbed to death, and I think what they were planning to do was frame me for the murder, right? Like, I'm running around, I don't even have a knife, you know what I mean? I have no weapons, I have a pepper spray, but like, try to like, they're so dumb, like try to blame me. And there's cameras like all over this place. It was next to a CVS, a coffee shop. I intentionally picked that spot because there are security cameras there. I want security cameras in case something like that does happen. It's not for my protection, but it is a deterrent for most, right? Not all the time, but a lot of times criminals will see the cameras and think twice before they do something dumb. But also in case, they try to frame me for some sort of crime, I can say, nope, there's security cameras there, right there, right there. You know what I mean? Like, check your cameras, right? And you'll see that I didn't do it, right? So anyway, that's what happened in Phoenix. So somebody actually did get murdered, and I think, again, it was all done with the intent of framing me for a murder, which clearly didn't work, right? I mean, I know there were investigators involved investigating. I never heard back from the cops in Arizona, so I don't think that there's a problem. I don't have a warrant out. They just ran my background here in Vegas, so I should be fine, right? So I don't think the plot worked, but just to kind of tell you guys kind of like how that works, right? People have been murdered, but at the same time, it's, as long as I'm not getting, pinned with these crimes, I'm not committing them, right? It is what it is, right? The way I look at it is I'm protected by God, right? And I'm not being selfish, but the reason that God protects my life is because I'm a good person, right? I'm an innocent person. I haven't done anything wrong, right? I upheld the Constitution, right? I kept my oath to God, right? And so God rewarded me with It sounds crazy, guys, but it's invincibility. When you've got the federal government, and the elites putting you in a human trophy hunt, right, and trying to kill you, they're going to kill you, right? They have not been able to kill me, and there's a reason for that. They can't. It's not because they don't want to. They've tried 1,000 times. Trust me, everything they can think of. I'm unkillable. But this goes back to biblical times, biblical prophecy, right? Christ rose from the dead after 3 days. And God proved that he can give someone eternal life in exchange for their obedience to the Lord, right? And so because I do follow the 10 commandments to the best of my ability. Now, is that to say that I've never told a lie? Absolutely not, right? I have lied. And it's in some levels, when I'm out here on the street, sometimes I have to lie for safety reasons, right? I have to tell someone, no, I don't have a cigarette or a lighter for you. I don't give away my cigarettes, I used to, but I had to stop doing that a long time ago. Things like that. But these are the types of things, God understands my situation, right? And obviously I don't mean to sin. That's not ever my intent. It's just that God understands and knows where my heart is when I am in a position where I do need to tell a lie. Now, do I lie to law enforcement? No. Do I lie to you guys? No, right? I have no reason to lie, right? But in life or death situations, if somebody asks me if they can have money or a cigarette and I maybe happen to have that, I don't want to give it to them. I just tell them I don't have it, right? And that is a lie. But, what happens when you tell a homeless person, well, I do have 2 packs of cigarettes, which I don't, right? But hypothetically, right? But just not giving you them. They're going to rob you, or they're going to get in a fight with you, right? They're going to get angry that you're not giving them your stuff. So I just, for safety reasons, right, tell them, sorry, I don't have it, and that's it, right? So there's all different scenarios to consider, but God understands my situation. God knows my scenario, and God knows the intention behind what is happening, right? I have had to steal twice since I've been on the streets. When I was in Florida, which is what they're doing to me right now, they go through cycles and I don't know what they do in the background or what point this is making, but where they completely block me from everything. So like right now, I'm blocked from any income. I'm not allowed to have even 1 penny. And I think it's because they're hoping that I'll sell myself in prostitution, or that I'll get so desperate for food that I'll go into the grocery store and steal something to eat, right? Which I would never do, right? So the times that I have had to steal, which was twice, there was a hotel that I was actually living at the pool of. I was sneaking, in and out, but I just, disguised myself as a hotel guest. And I was living at this pool for quite a while. And they had a free breakfast every day. And so 2 times I got very hungry. And these are times, guys, I've had to go. I was eating out of the trash can, but for 5 days or 3 days, however long it was days, right? Nobody threw anything that I could eat away. Sometimes there was a Chick-fil-A next door, so people would throw away half of their fries. So I would take those out of the trash and eat those. But this, particular times, there was stretches and I would walk to other hotels and things and look for any sort of anything I could eat, right? But there was nothing. So after several days of not eating, I went inside the hotel, pretended to be a guest, and took some food, just enough, right? Not a lot, and I did not glutton, I didn't overdo it, but I took just enough food, to sustain me for 2 or 3 days, like a banana, 2 packs of peanut butter, a bagel, things that I could keep with me, carry with me, and then stretch it out where I would have for my meal, a dinner, I would have half of a bagel, I would have the banana for breakfast, and I would only eat, I was eating maybe 500 calories a day, if that. I lost a lot of weight at that time. I was very skinny, but those were the 2 times I had to steal. It was both times I went inside the hotel and I took food from the breakfast buffet. But that's it, guys. That's the extent of my crimes. I have jaywalked, and I do that. I just did it right now, but it's a residential kind of like offside street, but I didn't go up to the main road and go to the crosswalk. I waited until traffic stopped and then, went and, ran across the street. So I do jaywalk occasionally, and that is a crime. I will admit that. I could be ticketed, even arrested for that. So it's a risk. I should not be doing that. But, sometimes I jaywalk. I don't run across like the highway or put other people in danger or, put myself in a position where it could cause an accident or anything like that. I'm very careful about what I'm doing. But, sometimes it just doesn't make sense to, walk all the way out of the way just to cross the road, So anyway, given all of that, God has protected my life. I do follow God's 10 commandments, and thou shalt not jaywalk is not a commandment. So I don't think God is too concerned about that. But the stealing, that's a commandment, and lying is a commandment, right? So I have had to violate the commandments on occasion, rarely. But, you have to look at the circumstances as well, So anyway, because of that, God gave me full spiritual protection, physical protection as well. I can't be killed. And that's the truth. And there are several police departments across the country: Chicago, Phoenix, Atlanta, Tampa, Pinellas County, Savannah, Raleigh, that can attest to that. They have seen it with their own two eyes, in addition to thousands of cult members, because they've gotten together many times and had these sacrificial rituals where they intended to murder me, and I don't die. So a lot of people have witnessed this, but this is another reason why God revoked the blessings and protection from the planet, because when you have unkillable earth angels attempting to save your life, and you continue to try to kill them and send hate and laugh as they are tortured and raped and starved, you get Sodom and Gomorrah. But it's much worse than Sodom and Gomorrah, because in Sodom and Gomorrah, they only thought about raping the angels. They didn't actually touch the angels. Here in America, right, I continually get accosted, raped, and being tortured right now, right? This is actually, this is a crime. This is a very serious crime. It's not just the human trafficking, but it is considered, an extreme hate crime. I'm a Jew, so America is anti-Semitic, but it's a hate crime, and this is considered torture. I'm being held hostage by the United States. I've been granted asylum to go to other countries. I can leave, right? I've got other countries that would take me in with open arms, right, as a whistleblower. But I am literally being held hostage by the United States, and in addition to being held hostage, I'm being tortured, right, as a prisoner of war, which is crazy because I'm an unarmed civilian. I'm not part of a terrorist organization. I'm not a combatant. I'm a U.S. citizen. So they have declared, the United States of America has declared war on me, and they have launched an actual war against me. And it is because, I know too much about what's happening here. But the reason I know too much is because of what they exposed me to, thinking that I was going to be dead, right? So the president's coming to rape me. They think, oh, well, we're just going to kill her and nobody will ever know about it, right? But I don't die. So now they've all been raping me. All these celebrities, the royal family, presidents, right? World leaders, and I'm not dead. So it's a big problem for me to have this information. And like I said, I didn't go seeking it, right? It came to me via the attacks. And so, you know, I think that's unfair, right? I think that I should be released and just left alone. That's all I want. I wanted to go into witness protection, and live in another country, but live indoors where I can lock the door and not have to deal with the general public. Sorry, I gotta plug in my phone. Because it is a very, for me, it's obviously very dangerous to be out in public, right? Because not only do I have these deranged celebrities and politics elites literally hunting me like an animal. I have all of their minions doing their bidding for them, such as the FBI, such as everybody, right? The homeless bums, like I said, they can offer them $50 and they'll take me out, or try. So, it's a very dangerous situation, and that's global, right? Because it's not just the American politicians and celebrities, it extends globally, right? So anyway, back to kind of what I was talking about, which is I ended up in this position not because I did anything wrong or posed a threat to the United States, never, right? My crime is literally upholding the law, defending the Constitution, and defending your lives. I did not think it was appropriate to genocide you, and so I stood up and did something about it, right? Unfortunately, though, now 3 years into this, it's not just kids in the meat grinder anymore. It's the planet, the diseases, the food supply, the water supply, all of that has progressed to the point that we are at now, in relation to their population reduction plan, which is to kill all of you. And the damage is done, right? I can't fix it. You lost the protection of God because you worship Satan, and you're wicked. And so God said, okay, he hasn't even poured out his wrath on you guys, but he's gonna, because there is a punishment for this. And it will be worse than Sodom and Gomorrah, and Sodom and Gomorrah were turned into dust, essentially. Okay, I'm back. The signal's going out. I thought they kicked me off. So basically, spiritually, right, now we call America one nation under God, right? We have "in God we trust" written on the money, on the license plates, right? And that is the real God, God of the Bible, right, that we're referring to, the creator of the universe, because this is the actual Holy Land, right? And this is why you have the angels and the prophets here in America, right? And this is what made America so abundant. This was what made it the greatest nation on earth, right? Is that we had all the resources, all the, God's people, right? The real true stars, the celebrities, Michael Jackson, Whitney Houston, Prince, Britney Spears, Walt Disney, the actual true, gifts from God, right? We're American, right? And we brought so much good to America, and we made America look very good, right? We made America very prosperous, right? And those aren't the only ones, but just to give you some examples, right? We made America the greatest nation on earth, right? But instead of treating us appropriately, and this goes for all of us starseeds, they decided to diminish us, right? Throw us to the streets like trash. Well, I'm thrown to the streets But, you know, we see, like, we'll just, again, use Hollywood as an example. You know, what they did to Whitney, they made her look like a crackhead. Michael Jackson, same thing. They made him look like a pedophile. Walt Disney, same thing. All these rumors swirling about how Walt was a pedo and like all this stuff. No, he was not, right? When he made Disney, he actually made it with the idea in mind that it would be a happy place for families to have happy memories, right? And he loved the animation portion of it, but he loved kids, right? And he wanted kids to, you know, to enjoy, you know, cartoons and things, you know, and it wasn't just for kids. Disney was made for adults too. It's made for entertainment. But, you know, decided to demonize us, to make us look bad, and then steal from us. So, you know, for instance, like, I'm not like a superstar singer, right? I'm not Whitney Houston, but I can sing, okay? They steal my voice, right? When I sing, they record it, and then they give it to their celebrities, right? Because those celebrities will do anything they want. They're their minions. So they get to have the fame, they get to have the accolades, they get to have our voices, right? But they use our voices to kind of like dub, you know, to make it look like they're the ones singing, but no, it's us in the background. And I'm not the only one that happens to, by the way. But no, my voice is in Disney movies. My voice is, multiple musicians have used my voice. So, you know, they're living it up, you know, in the lap of luxury in Hollywood, and I'm here, right? So there's just a few examples of kind of like why, you know, you guys lost America. You know, you lost the nation. And it's the cost of corruption, folks, you know, but what you're doing is wrong. It's immoral, right? It's immoral to capitalize on children in any way, right? That's not what kids are for. You know, it's immoral to torture people, to rape people, to torture people, to try to kill people that have, I mean, there's really, thou shalt not kill is the commandment. So there's really not ever going to be a time where you're going to be able to justify taking someone else's life. It's not justifiable. It's wrong. It's immoral in the eyes of the Lord. But America has now built an industry around getting away with murder, which you're eating murdered people, murdered U.S. citizens, you know, in McDonald's, right? So the place has become now Babylon. And that's why, you know, the rest of the world is also falling apart. But it's just disaster after disaster after disaster. Now, again, okay, so you had to have the Constitution not only in place, and this is why they won't take it down. I told them, you're going lawless, right? The whole country agrees with you, minus just a small fraction of the population, right? They want this, right? They want to be lawless. They want to be able to do anything they want and get away with it, right? Why would you still have the laws published on the FBI website or the DOJ website, right? Why do you still have the Constitution as the published law of the land? And it is because if they do not, right, if they don't uphold it and abide by it, then they lose the blessing and protection of God. So just like they think they can make, you know, Erica Kirk the new me, and they can trick God into thinking that she is me, right? And she's not the only one that's trying to be me. Trust me. There's multiple celebrities trying to be me. Okay, they're competing to be me because they want my blessings from God, right? Which they cannot have. Those are mine, right? But they are attempting to dupe the Lord, right? Trick God Almighty into believing that they are still law-abiding citizens, that they're upholding the law of the land, which is the Constitution, which was written with the 10 Commandments as the baseline. That's why murder is illegal. That's why stealing is illegal, right? Because the commandments were used as the structure, the foundation of the Constitution, because they had to do that in order to live here, one, but also to have the blessings and protections of God. And over the years, that has degraded, it has diminished, because they opened up the cult to the general population, whereas the cult used to be very exclusive, very elite. These were the ones who were always able to get away with anything, right, and do anything they want, is the elites, right, the celebrities, right, even the celebrities, guys. It was never to the point where it is now, right, where they can literally do anything they want and not ever worry about being arrested, right, or apprehended or prosecuted even, right? Now, the whole population has that liberty for the most part, right? And I know you guys view that as freedom, land of the free. But no, that's not what that meant. You twisted it. You twisted it. It was supposed to be freedom, as in I should be free to have a business without having to be part of a cult. I should be free to move if I want to move. I should be free to be whatever I want to be as far as my career or education goes, right? All of that has been stripped from me my whole life, right? I'm only allowed to do what the cult says I'm allowed to do, even though I never joined the cult. And as soon as I turned 18, I ran in the opposite direction. I still worked for the government, right? But I never forfeited my constitutional rights. I never forfeited my freedom of speech. I never did any deals with the devil, nor would I. I never joined the sex club. I never, I just stayed away from it because I was raised by the cult, guys. They're really, really bad people. They're horrible people, and I didn't want anything to do with it. They're mean, right? I wanted to have peace in my life. So I just chose to keep everybody at an arm's length and just, try to live my life as I thought every American had the right to do, which was minding my own business and you mind yours. But that's not true, and now the whole country has taken this stance that they are allowed to do anything they want to people that did not join the cult and to kids, right? And that's not freedom, right? That's not liberty and justice for all. That's liberty for you guys to be assholes, and you've taken that liberty and you've run with it, So do I disagree with the population reduction plan? No. No. Extinction is the only option. And why is that? Well, there's not enough room in the jails. Most of you are criminals and you need to be in prison for the crimes that you have committed, right? But because there are so many of you, it's so voluminous, right? There's not enough room in the jails. We don't have enough jails, okay? In addition, who would run the jails? Because the cops are criminals, right? The prison guards are criminals, right? We have nobody to run them. In addition to that, who is going to be paying for your room and board, right? Who's going to pay for your trial, right? Even if you skip the trial, plead guilty, and go directly to jail, who's going to be feeding you 3 times a day and making sure you have a nice air-conditioned cell and a bed to sleep in and clean clothes and, 3 meals a day and a shower. Not me. You feel me? Why would I want to do that? I'm not paying for you to extend your life in comfort, No, no, right? So to me, I agree. I agree. The punishment for this is death, guys. You don't get away with raping kids. No, no. If this was, 20, 30 years ago, okay, and there was a criminal organization in the country that of selling children to be raped, and they were caught, right? The country would be demanding their execution. And that's just the rape of children, right? Now we're talking about murder and cannibalism of children, U.S. citizens, right? The public would have torn you apart limb by limb. You wouldn't have made it to the courtroom, because America used to care about laws. They used to care about justice. They used to care about children. But the new generation of subspecies, right, does not. And so this simply, as a population, is not sustainable, right? We can't have a lawless free-for-all, right? That doesn't work. So there's that aspect of it. Now, why would they destroy the planet? Well, I told you. They thought they were going to a different planet. Okay, they have alien buddies. The government, the CIA, the elites, aliens actually run the world. It's the overlords, the reptilians. So they actually are already here, living amongst us, okay? A lot of the people you see on TV are actually reptilians. They're literally lizard people. And they're wearing a mask, or they're cloaked with, all kinds of special effects, Hollywood, okay? To make them look like they're people, normal people, but they're not. They're lizards. They're aliens, okay? It's a totally different species. And they have buddies in other galaxies, okay, that have other planets and things like that. They've been in communication with extraterrestrials the whole time. I was delivered to the planet by aliens, I swear. My soul, okay, because I'm a starseed. So the starseed souls came from extraterrestrials, right? And then it came with instructions from God on whose DNA to use and how to do that, which is how the CIA figured out how to do this, right? But like I said, it was supposed to be Whitney Houston and Walt Disney. They interjected Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton as well, right? So they whitewashed me, essentially. But they wanted to, pull in their bloodlines to make their bloodlines elite, right? Royalty, right? Whereas Whitney Houston's bloodline and Walt Disney's bloodline are actual royalty, right? But they wanted to be part of that. So, that's how that happened. But no, technically, I am also, so closely biologically related to both of them that I should have Secret Service protection, right? But because I would not join the cult, even after 17 years of service to the nation, honorable service, it doesn't matter, right? Because I wouldn't join the sex club, or marry, one of their frat boys, you know what I mean? Excommunicated, thrown to the streets, trash. I no longer matter. And that's fine, right? Because I don't want to be part of their club. Trust me, my life here, they're jealous of my life. They would rather be here, sitting on the street, sleeping outside, right, than where they are now. It's a very stressful existence, maintaining all of these lies, maintaining this facade, continuing this genocide plan when they don't need to do that anymore. The planet itself is purging, you know, the population. So there's no need to further, torment the masses. That was my opinion, right? But let me tell you something, you know, now, that was my opinion in the beginning. Now they're such assholes. I mean, you should see, like, just day to day how these people behave towards me, and I have never harmed anyone in my life. I tried to save all of their lives, and just having to walk around knowing that, and then to have them, like, I mean, I'm telling you, even like homeless people, because I don't get the benefits that they get, I'm banned, so they look at me like they're better than me, you know what I mean? And I'm like, you put yourself in this position, like, this is your chosen lifestyle, like, this is not my choice, first of all, but secondly, you're not better than me, but they're like, you know they feel like they're just, you know um better than me, and I have literal, like, talking cockroaches that, and again, you can't help your DNA, but you can help your behavior, that treat me like I'm trash, because I'm homeless, because I don't have a lot of money. And they do, because they work in fast food. It's like the people that work at Starbucks. That always happens if I start frequenting a Starbucks, and I come in as a paying customer, right? And never go to Starbucks like a bum, right? I come in, buy coffees, use the internet and charge my phone, right? Hang out and do my internet stuff, right? Like anybody else. But as soon as they get the whiff that I'm homeless, or their cult finds out, I've got these fast food employees that suddenly feel so superior, to me. And I'm like, honey, you work in fast food. Like, that's, again, it's a living, right? But I had a whole career, like, vacations, credentials, stuff I worked really hard for, and then, like, I've got these fast food employees, like, it happens in McDonald's, Taco Bell, anywhere. If I start going to one place, like, quite a bit, which I try not to do if I have that option, because of this reason, but, like, they start to treat me like, even though I never go into any establishment unless I have a business purpose to be there, if I'm buying something, right? They still treat me like, like they're better than me. And I'm like, dude, like, first of all, and I said this the other day on my Instagram about Panera, because they're doing that now. And I'm paying for a beverage club, so that I get beverages, coffee and stuff every day, which I can't use now because I don't have a bus ticket. But it's just like, I also buy food. Anytime, if I have money, when I go in there, I buy food. Sometimes I truly don't have money, right? So all I can get is a coffee or a soda. But if I have the money, I always get food. I have breakfast and a coffee, right? That shouldn't be a problem. It's a problem. And I'm a repeat customer. I don't bother anybody, but that for some reason, it's a problem, and this is America. They don't want repeat customers that come in every single day and spend money. They want to be better than you, So it's like, I didn't know it was a competition, but now I'm just like, compete away, sis. Why? Well, surprise, you're out of water. You're not going to have a job. Your whole town's getting shut down. And also, there's a massive earthquake about to strike the West Coast any second, and you're probably going to die in that. So you're dead, it's a death sentence, right? And I'm one of two people that tried to stop this from happening to you. But that's fine, Becky. Whatever makes you feel good about yourself. And that goes for everybody, especially here on YouTube. I get the snarkiest, shittiest, all day. I mean, it's comical how much I get attacked. Just for warning people about what is going on. Telling them, hey, look at this. Did you know about this? pay attention to this, major natural disasters that the government's not talking about, things that I happen to have knowledge of that are critical, life or death, and I try to tell them, and they get so infuriated with me, about just telling them what is going on. And I'm like, well, it speaks to the mental faculties of the subcreation, right? Normal people, if someone were to come up right now and tell me, hey, a water main busted and this whole place is about to get flooded out, you might want to, move before all your stuff gets flooded or whatever, right? I'd be like, okay, thank you. I'd probably want to go see for myself, maybe check it out, right? But I wouldn't be like, fuck you, You know what I mean? That is where we're at. They're so far away from human that the survival instinct has somehow morphed into this thought that nothing bad can ever happen to them, and dare you say otherwise, you are trash, And it's like, but I'm trying to help you. I was trying to help them survive. It couldn't be done. It couldn't be done because this applies to judges, cops. This applies to law enforcement across the board. This applies to even NATO and the UN. I reached out to them. This applies to foreign governments. This applies to everybody. This has been the response from the planet, right? Across the board. I deserve to be tormented, tortured. I deserve what has happened to me, in their opinion, for trying to save their lives, And again, it's because they're born with mental illness, and they have been for generations now, And so I agree that they need to be euthanized, right? But then my argument became, instead of dehydrating them to death, you deranged lunatics, why don't you just gas them? And then you can take their cadavers and turn them into dog food or Taco Bell or whatever you want, right? But the humane thing to do would be drop gas bombs, on the cities, right? And euthanize you guys that way. That's what I thought, right? But I don't know. They're not doing that, right? So they want to dehydrate you guys to death. They want you to starve, And why do they want that? Well, it's the devil, guys. That's why. You can't ever think the devil has your back. They're deranged, they're demons from hell. They are the opposite of God, right? Where God would want you to be fruitful and abundant, and God blessed you with water, plenty of water, and food, and clean, breathable air, and all of these things. That's what God wanted for you. But the devil wants you to suffer and die, So you worship the devil. I don't know what else to say. This is your free will choice. I had that choice too, trust me, many times in my life to align with the devil, I chose not to align because I just don't agree with the fundamentals, right? We are polar opposites as it relates to how we treat others, how we engage in business, our morals and integrity, right? This is demons and angels, the north and south, right? So that I'm not going to compromise my integrity, right? Or my morals to be part of a gang or be part of a group or a family, right? I'm not going to compromise my integrity to gain personally, right? Where I would be, I mean, they offered me anything I want. Anything. right? I could be a celebrity, a singer, an actress. I could have a company, a big giant company. I could run one, anything. Lots of money, anything. But what I wanted was for them to leave my kid alone, right? I wanted her to have her birthright as an American, which is like the pursuit of happiness, which was taken from me, and I wanted better for her, right? So I said, no, thank you, right? I'm good. And at the time I had my little business, right? They destroyed it. They had Scientology and everybody else, coming for me, killing my business, right? Putting me in a very bad financial situation. And all of a sudden, I didn't do that to myself. They did that. But then they swooped in, the hero, right? Captain Save-A-Ho. And, join our club and we'll give you anything you want, But what I wanted was safety and freedom for my daughter. And so I was willing to die for that. I was willing to fight for her, right? And all of the children, right? And all of the victims. And I do every day. So I just chose that path. And this is where the path has led me. Being tortured, tormented, mocked, ridiculed, made fun of, become the laughing stock of every town. The world, really, because I'm on global internet, So lots of foreign people watch my videos, follow me on Instagram as well. I don't post very much over there at all anymore, but they do follow me here as well. They see these videos. They see what's going on, and they think it is somehow justified or funny, right? But it ties back to that mental illness that they have that makes them want to attack someone who is genuinely looking out for their best interests, right? Trying to warn them, trying to give them a heads up. They cannot accept, for some reason, like life-threatening situations or the fact that their life may be in danger. And that's where I'm losing the plot, right? Because I don't know if maybe they were told that they are unkillable, or perhaps they have some eternal life thing in their mind. But for some reason, when you bring up the possibility of death to these creatures, they get hostile. I mean, it's nothing short of hostile, right? And so trying to explain to them their life was in danger was met only with violence and hostility on their part. And that is another reason why the species, you guys, right, couldn't be saved. Because you come at me with hostility when I am trying to help you. I did everything I could to help you. Okay, so does anybody have any questions? It shows 2 people, but there's a lot more in here. They always do that. It'll like jump. It'll be from like 15 and then it'll say 0 and then it'll say 2. So I'd be happy to answer any questions if you want to know anything else that's going on in the background with these deranged lunatics. But that's what they're doing, guys. And because everybody has taken the blood oath, the vow of silence, not only that, you're lacking survival instinct, and also you're in a state of delusion and cognitive dissonance, right? Anybody with half a brain cell could tell you that the sun has been too hot for several years now, that there was a problem, that this was going to create problems on the planet, right? And you guys didn't even care. You didn't notice, you didn't pay attention, nobody said anything, nobody questioned it, and when I would bring it up, it was met with like, oh my God, you're crazy. It's like, but life on Earth can only take so much before they start dying of, the plants, the vegetation, the animals, the Homo sapien, whatever you want to call the species, right? You can't go sit in a oven and live, you can only take so much heat. And so that to me was also a big shocker. I'm like, you don't realize that the sun is too hot? Like, But I have to bring it back to, they must have modified your survival instinct in the genetic modifications that have been done, to your species, I don't know what else it could be, because the reality that we have to face, right? And it's Vegas. It's the same with Arizona. And again, I'm just using Vegas as an example. So I'm here, right? By the time I got here, the damage was done. This was guaranteed death sentence, guaranteed the city's closing, right? One way or another, right? So I'm just pointing out the obvious. You're out of water, Vegas. You can't have even a hospital or a grocery store, much less, a 5,000 room hotel or a casino open without running water. But it's like everybody was under and again, you're still in a state of delusion about it. I don't even bring it up to people on the streets because, well, I don't care, number one. But number two, it's pointless. It's pointless to try to tell someone that resources are not unlimited, that we need to make efforts to conserve resources, because things such as water, right, especially in a modernized civilization, a big city like Vegas, right, where you're reliant on tourism is your primary, I know gaming is the industry here, but these people make their money to gamble off of tourism. Not everyone, but a large percentage of your population is based on your very robust and abundant tourism industry. I know about that. I'm from Florida, right? We're in the same boat. But we must have running water. Otherwise, we can't have a hotel open or a restaurant, especially food. You have to have it to cook, to clean, to wash your hands, right? A hospital requires water for many things. And so to get here and to be like, everybody's just like, it's fine. Oh yeah, where do you think you're getting more water? Lake Powell's dried up, Lake Mead is dried up, the Colorado River's dried up, right? I'm just curious. Maybe you know something I don't know, right? But what I know is once Lake Mead, and you're there, right, dips below that red line, you're going to lose power. And water is not going to come out of your faucets. So I'm wondering if you could possibly tell me how it got to this point without anybody doing anything, stopping it. Even these casino owners who are making billions. Did you just get so wrapped up in the lifestyle that you forgot to pay attention to the most critical, fundamental issues that would shutter your entire business? Did you? You need water. You were just depending on someone else to do that for you? And again, I get that. That's not your wheelhouse, right? Running water is running water, but especially here in Vegas, where running water is actually like a modern marvel of technology because we're in the middle of the fucking desert. So they had to figure out this whole infrastructure thing based on getting water to Vegas, right? It's not like it was just here. You're not built on a river, in Florida we have all these aquifers and stuff. No, you were dependent on it took a lot of engineering, a lot of planning, a lot of behind the scenes project work to make this a reality. You would think that it would be on the kind of the top of everyone's mind, okay, and somehow we worship the dumb fucking government, right? The Elon Musk, the cult, right? To the point, it's secret societies. I know your hands are tied. All you can do is sit back and watch them literally take your like life source and just sit back like assholes while they literally destroy your entire economy. Every property here worth zero. The homes, it doesn't matter if you have the biggest mansion in Vegas. You don't have running water or electricity, it's not selling. You feel me? Property value, zero. Your hotels, your casinos, worthless. Nobody's buying. Right? Because they can't make any money off of these things. It's just an empty, comfortably anyway. You feel me? So, not just your economy though, like you actually need water to live. And so it's like, I think everybody just forgot that you need water. I don't know what's happening. So we've reached the end of this experiment. It was a profitable experiment. You guys made a lot of money. You had a lot of fun. But unfortunately, you know, the corruption got too extreme. And you guys know what I'm talking about because I know what you guys do. So, because of that, you know, it's the end. You killed yourselves, you killed your own city with the corruption. And who do you have yourself? I mean, who do you have to blame? Not me. I didn't do this to you. You know? So anyway, that's where we're at, folks. And then the Vegas water issue is just Vegas is just a blip on the radar of planet Earth, right? There's 8 billion people and thousands of big cities, right? So yeah, Vegas is a world landmark, of course, but it's not like it's more important than London or Paris or, I mean, any city, right? There's plenty across the world, right, that are big and profitable and have major tourism industries. Miami, you know, New York. So, you know, I don't know, guys. It's time to shut it down, you know? But what's the right thing to do, right? In this scenario, you're running out of water, right? You're not going to be able to remedy this. It's not fixable. So do you tell your citizens, we're out of water? You know? It's your decision. But this is what's about to happen. Right? Or do you wait until they wake up one day and can't turn on the lights and they don't have running water and see what happens? Right? Because what I see happening here in Vegas is not good, right? Because also your gas stations cannot operate. Your airport cannot operate, right? So what I see, right, is you're gonna have about 24 hours before all hell breaks loose. And everybody's armed heavily, right? This is a crazy town. And I'm from Florida. I'm from the gunshine state, right? I know all about it, right? But I would not want to be in a situation where the water and power are out and it's not coming back on, and the internet here Most particularly, this isn't small town America where everybody's going to get together and hold hands and sing kumbaya and, help each other out. Oh no. This is going to go crazy because this is a town of criminals, right? This is a town of every man for himself, right? This is a town of addicts as well. This is a town of debauchery. You know what I mean? You can't trust anybody. So I just see it going real bad real quick, but again, you tell them and it's like, where do they go? Do they want to go to California? Probably not. Probably that whole West Coast is a bad idea, right? Or are we going to go maybe a little over this way, right? The other way to the east, where you're going to get massive tornadoes, floods, they're going through it, right? They're getting hit left, right, and center with weather manipulation, but also the planet is going through a magnetic pole shift. We have the El Nino. We have very serious stuff, right? So that's why I didn't go that way to get out of the heat, right? Because it would have made more sense for me to go back to like Chicago or that, back to the Midwest for the summer, right? But they're baking as hot as we are down here as well. And they're in no better shape, right? With regard to resources, almost everybody's out of water. And this is why it was my suggestion to have you guys euthanized with the gas. Because it's a really tough one. Only, you could think about leaving the country and leaving all of this behind, right? If you can get another country to take you in as a permanent resident. There's a process. They don't just take everybody, right? You don't just get to go where you want to go and just, set up camp. You would be considered an immigrant, a refugee. Do you think they want to take you on? Do you think they can? That would probably get kiboshed pretty quick. Guys, every place in the U.S. is, in bad shape. But this isn't like my fault. I tried to prevent this, right? And the fact that they went ahead and destroyed it is so stupid. What they were mad about, is like biblical prophecy about the, God's people inheriting the earth. Okay, so the reason they chose to destroy the planet, right? Because, they would have to live here too, but when they were jealous of Earth, okay? They were jealous because God created Earth and not them, and so they felt like they could take another planet and literally from the ground up build, create something better, right? So that's that. They hate Earth because they're jealous of Earth. Number one. But number two, and they're bored. They say they're bored with it. But number two, it was prophesied that God's people would inherit the earth. The meek would inherit the earth, right? And so they decided, instead of allowing that to happen, that they were going to go ahead and annihilate planet itself so that God's people, like they did with Disney, okay, that was my inheritance, right? Part of it. But is trashed, right? It's not only tainted with blood of children, but the parks, the facilities, are trashed, right? California is going bye-bye. Florida is as good as gone. Paris is gone. Tokyo, Hong Kong, Shanghai, all gone because of the damage to the planet, right? So there's nothing left. There's nothing left to inherit. So they rendered it worthless because they did not want the true, heirs and heiresses to get it, you know. So there's that, right? With the plan and with the idea that they would reduce the population and go start a new colony on a different planet, start fresh, build it from scratch, But when they knocked the planet off the axis and started this process of destroying it, they assumed that they had, because they've never done this before, they didn't know what would happen, so they assumed they had roughly 50 years to figure out how to get to a new planet and all this stuff, how to actually get through the firmament, which they've never been able to do. But clearly God has frustrated their plans, right? Things started happening a lot faster than they anticipated, because it's also biblical prophecy that God would speed up time for his chosen, right? So that we wouldn't have to endure the suffering any longer than, necessary, right? And so God has essentially sped up the destruction of Earth. And it's out of their hands now. They cannot control what's happening. They've made dumb comments like they're in control of the volcanoes. No, they're not. That's such a lie. Yeah, they caused them to erupt by knocking the planet off its axis, the rising. So they caused them to erupt, yes, but they can't prevent them from erupting now, no. Right? They can't prevent these earthquakes from occurring either. They can cause earthquakes with underground detonations and things like that, and by tilting the planet off its axis as well, but they cannot prevent them now because the damage is done. There's no way to correct the planet. Somebody asked me that just tonight on a comment, like, hey, what if we could reverse the damage and fix it and, blah, blah, blah. We can't. God would have to do that, but he's not going to, for a few reasons. Number one, the planet is destroyed. It's depleted of resources. It's dirty. It's polluted. It's just trashed, so it's like a demo job at this point, right? But number two, we need a bigger hell. And so the planet is being turned into hell to contain everyone who decided that that's where they would like to spend eternity, right? So the planet's gonna be turned into hell, the lake of fire, which is where people that have chosen hell, right? And now we need a bigger hell. And then God made a new earth, and I've seen it, just a snippet. But one of the times they were trying to kill me in Pinellas County in the jail, God showed me what I believe was the New Jerusalem. And it was like a city made out of gold and like crystals. It was very pretty, and so he showed me, like, listen, there is a new planet. They found it. It's actually been on YouTube that they're talking about, like, oh, we found a new planet and they're thinking, like, how can they get there, right? They can't. They don't have the technology. But not only that, we simply do not have the materials on this planet that would be required to build a vessel or construct a vessel that is capable of traveling, to even Mars, right? They don't have it. There's the physical materials. This is why when UFOs have crashed, God allowed that to happen so that they could analyze the materials that they were made out of and see this is not something that we even have on this planet. The things that make the technology possible for these extraterrestrials to visit Earth is available on their planet. They can build these craft because they have the raw materials available. But Earth does not have those materials, right? We don't have a metal that's sturdy enough, yet light enough, to travel through distant galaxies. We just don't have it, right? So their only hope now is that they get raptured basically by their alien buddies. But here's the other caveat, and this is also real, and I'm not crazy, I'm not schizophrenic, this is real. There's something called the Galactic Federation, right? And in the Bible, when God says, I will send an army whose language you do not understand, it's them. They're aliens. It's extraterrestrials. And they're here. And so, like I said, when Elon tried to shoot another rocket up, he's done this now, and Bezos, and NASA has been trying. They've been trying everything to get off the planet because they know what they did. So the elites are really pushing and funding, this program to get the hell off of Earth because it's about to explode, and they know that. And so Elon's rockets, every single one, has been shot down. This is why they're crashing, and this is why they're not crashing into neighborhoods and houses and, things like that. It's the Galactic Federation is shooting down their spacecraft because they're not allowed to leave. They have to stay because they're going to hell. And there's no way out. So, they're fighting at the Taco Bell. Punching the car. Okay. So anyway, I keep seeing that today. People are getting very violent. Violent everywhere. So anyway, they're mad, right? They're frustrated. They're pissed off. And they are, I guess they're just you gotta understand, they also have like the mind virus and all this other crazy shit, syphilis and everything else, the brain worms. Okay. And so they're thinking, like, again, you would think they would want to extend the time they have before Earth turns into a fireball. But they're just continually taking every measure conceivable to accelerate the process of turning Earth into a fireball. And one of the reasons is that they are petrified that people are going to find out about the Epstein ring and that everybody's involved. And I'm like, guys, you're all involved. So what's the big deal? Nobody's going to jail. You made a pact. There's not enough room in the jails, So just own it. This is what we are. This is what we're doing. And if you don't like it, oh well, right? That's your problem. That's been the stance they've taken with me. And I can't do anything about it. What do they expect anybody else? Most of you are involved in the Epstein ring. So it's not like you're going to be demanding their heads in jars, and I don't know how much of the rest of the planet. I guess there's only 8% of the adults that aren't involved in some way, right? Well, 8% aren't slated for hell. So that's very little, right? But they don't want people to know. They want to maintain the facade that they are good-natured, law-abiding citizens with integrity that have just been doing the right thing. And what did Jack Smith say? He said, just a bunch of good guys doing great things for the world. That's the picture that they have painted of themselves, that they're, wholesome and like the prince wholesome the celebrities, wholesome. Like, no, they're far from wholesome, right? But they've painted this picture of themselves, and this is the role that they have been playing, the character that they have been cast into, that they're this just swell guy, swell girl, Erica Kirk with her children's orphanage charity. Oh, I love the kids, and oh yes, I'm so charitable, and I'm just an angel that just makes sure that children have safe and happy homes. Bitch. But this is what they have painted themselves as, right? These great people. And they've done that by modeling themselves off of God's people, copying what we do and say and how we behave, our mannerisms, But that's not what they are, They're very bad people. And they know that. They don't want anybody else to know. So they would rather everybody die, including themselves, than be exposed, So they're accelerating, guys, public, you should know, that how the time is short, because what they have already done just to this very second, and they're still behind the scenes bombing the shit out of the Middle East. Eventually, and it's all scripted, sure, but I see these dumbasses, like, yeah, we're taking the Middle East down, it's fucking awesome. Dude, they're doing that because that gives the Middle East and the rest of the world total reason to annihilate the United States, and that is what's going to happen. But in the meantime, they're bombing out elementary schools and, just doing the most. And that's far from all, right? So they're accelerating both their demise and the demise of people that are not immortal, right? And I'm not talking about cloning yourself and having a clone, that doesn't give you immortality. Your soul goes to hell when you die. Clones are bots programmed by AI. They don't have a soul. They have the consciousness is transferred. The memories, I guess, are transferred, but your soul goes to hell when you die. And so that doesn't give you immortality. That's just creating a meat suit and using, technology to emulate what the person was. But even the clones are degraded. I mean, look at the Susan Dell clone. That's one of my favorite ones to tell people to look at. It's like, it's so bad. And I keep telling them, please stop putting this on television. Like, this is not good. People can see that something is off, but they don't listen, it's just like they think it looks great, like in their mind it's perfection, and nobody can tell that it's a clone. And I'm like, no, I can tell when it's a clone. Like, trust me, I've dealt with enough clones that now I can immediately tell when it's a real life person and a clone, like, so it's just I don't know, but I guess the closing message on all of this would be, it's time to prepare for the end, folks. And it's time to start thinking about, my opinion would be, while you have the freedom to do so, is get where you want to be for the end. If you have family members that you want to be with, go be with them. If you have kids that go to school in another state, bring them home. It's stuff like that I think would be the right thing to do, but it's not what the public deserves either. In the same breath, that's what I would do, but in the same breath, these are assholes, right? I don't get to be with my kid. I don't get to be with anybody, right? I just have to sit here until God delivers me. But you guys have freedom, and the ability to still travel right now, but that could be cut off at any time. Like I said, Vegas, your lights go out, you're shut down. No more travel, gas stations closed, airport closed. Okay? California, even just a major pre-quake, right? A mag 7, 8 is going to screw up your travel. Okay? And probably knock down a few buildings here, I'm assuming. You're close enough where that's going to be a problem, Vegas. You could get struck. You've been hit with several earthquakes over the past several months yourselves, so that could happen any second, and all of that is on the brink, right? The El Nino could kick in as well here. We've been lucky because you're under my umbrella, which I don't want you to be. I don't extend that to you, but that is something that God extends to me, right? So that I don't have to suffer. But well, I'm suffering. It's hot as balls out here, but this isn't like gonna kill me, if that makes sense. It's just extremely uncomfortable. I hate it. It's too hot. But because you guys have that freedom, you should do that, because your job doesn't matter, your property doesn't matter. It's all gone. And you guys can sit here and pretend that it's fine if you want to. That's your free will choice. Some people don't want to face death. They don't want to face reality, right? But the reality is you truly do not have long to live. And neither does your family, right? And neither does any of this, And so, because they're not disclosing how much time you have before your power goes out, they're just going to pop surprise that on you. It's something to consider. It's something to consider. But no, this can't be fixed. God is not going to fix it for you. And it's because you hate God. Right? You took for granted every blessing. Took it as an entitlement, a birthright, which is insane to me. But you did. And so God's not taking it. God did not deplete your water. Right? God did not make the sun too hot. God did not do any of this. You guys did this with your corruption. So you have to now deal with the problems that you yourselves have created, right? Nobody did this to you. This is a proposed extinction event, and it's unfortunate, but you guys could not get your shit together in time. You never did. I tried to reason with everybody. I tried to talk sense into everybody. I tried to rationalize, warn you, to give you real life examples of what would and was going to happen if you did not cease what you were doing. But because of the corruption, it's so thick, it's so deep, it's so severe. Nobody was willing to take the hit. Nobody was willing to do the right thing. Nobody was willing. Again, people died for this Constitution. And it's not even, it is about the Constitution, but nobody was willing to sacrifice themselves for the better of their country, their community, the world. Everybody took the every man for himself stance. So that's where you're at. It's about covering your own ass right now and until the end. So that's what's going on, guys. It's showing 0, so I know that's not accurate, but I'm gonna get off here. I really wish I could go get something to drink, but I can't. And I'll be sitting out here starving to death in the hot sun because I don't have a way to take the bus. I can't get to Panera. I can't, the library's closed tomorrow. And I am doing this, right, because I tried to help you. This is my punishment. I didn't do this to you. God didn't do this to you. I didn't cause this. God didn't cause this. God tried everything, including making the whistleblowers unkillable, right? Just so that we could reach you, just so that we could, you know, we could give you every chance, you know, to save yourselves. But nobody was willing to do the right thing. And now it's too late. So, enjoy your AC, enjoy your running water, have a nice meal, spend some time with your kids. It's the best advice I have for you guys.